Okay, so when you hear something, sound waves are going to travel through your external auditory meatus into this tympanic membrane, or what you would know as your eardrum. So your eardrum is going to vibrate, and then it's going to transfer that mechanical energy to an ossicle, or a tiny little bone in the middle ear cavity. So the first ossicle is going to be called the malleus, and that's going to connect to the tympanic membrane at this little pointy edge called the umbo. The malleus will transfer those vibrations to the next ossicle called the incus, and then to the stapes. And the stapes is going to be the ossicle who transfers that mechanical energy into the inner ear. And it's going to do that at the oval window. And that's going to cause vibrations in the perilymph in the inner ear. So there are going to be two muscles that are going to function to dampen loud noises and slow down the vibrations of these ossicles, and those are going to be the tensor tympani and the stapedius. The tensor tympani is going to attach to the malleus, and that's going to be innervated by the trigeminal nerve, so TNT. The stapedius is going to attach to the stapes, and that's going to be innervated by the facial nerve. So now let's just kind of look at how the inner ear is organized. So if you took a cross section through the inner ear in this direction, out here in blue is supposed to be showing the bony cochlea, whereas in purple here, this is the membranous part, or the cochlear duct. The cochlear duct sort of ends up forming this like cone-like shape. The apex of the cochlear duct is going to attach to the modiolus, which is the central part of the bone that the cochlear canal spirals around, whereas the wider base is going to attach to the outside wall of the cochlear canal. So the cochlear duct is going to be composed of two membranes. One is going to be called the vestibular membrane, and the other is called the basilar membrane. The basilar membrane is attached to a lateral projection from the bony modiolus that's called the ossus spiralamina. So within the cochlear duct, we know we're going to have endolymph, and outside of the cochlear duct, just adjacent to the bony cochlea, we're going to have perilymph. And this particular region that's adjacent to the vestibular membrane is going to be called the scala vestibuli. And this region that's adjacent to the basilar membrane is going to be called the scala tympani. Within the cochlear duct, this region is going to be called the scala media. So, going back to this image, this region located up here is the scala vestibuli, whereas this region down here is the scala tympani. So the stapes contacting the oval window it's contacting the oval window in the scala vestibuli. So the stapes will tap on the oval window right here, which will cause vibrations to go through the perilymph, which will end up moving the cochlear duct. If you were to roll out the entire cochlear canal and cochlear duct, you would eventually get to a region where the scala vestibuli meets the scala tympani, and that region is called the helicotrema. So the vibrations will continue to go through the scala tympani, and they will end at the round window located in the scala tympani. So moving back to this cross section, within the cochlear duct is going to be the sensory transduction organ called the organ of Corti. In the organ of Corti, there are going to be 3 rows of outer hair cells and 1 row of inner hair cells. These hair cells are going to have stereocilia located on the apical or free surface of the hair cells, and the stereocilia are going to be the sensory transduction elements. The outer hair cells are going to be embedded in a gelatinous structure called the tectorial membrane. So when movement of the scala vestibuli causes movement of the perilymph, that'll eventually cause movement in the cochlear duct, which will eventually cause movement of this tectorial membrane, which is going to cause movement of the stereocilia on top of these hair cells, which will transduce the mechanical energy into electrical energy. Now, the outer hair cells are going to function to modulate the sensitivity of the inner hair cells. And they're going to do this by changing their length and the stiffness of their hair cells. And it's going to do this because the outer hair cells contain a ATP-independent molecular motor protein called prestin that will allow for outer hair cell contraction. Now, the inner hair cells are going to be those that are responsible for transducing the movement of the endolymph into receptor potentials that will eventually be perceived as sound. So the inner cells are going to be the only hair cells that are innervated by the peripheral processes of the spiral ganglion. And the spiral ganglion neurons are going to be the first order neurons of the auditory pathway. So the central processes of the bipolar spiral ganglion cells are going to form the cochlear nerve.